talk about it, and then I'll come back and talk about it. I'm good. Next meeting.
What's your step?
I don't want to cause a hardship.
Hello.
Your neighbor.
Welcome.
We're all set?
Yes.
Hey, Greg. All right, Mayor, I'm going to start. You okay?
I learned that he should need a variance.
Well, good evening, everyone. This is the Borough of Oradell Planning Board meeting for February 4th, 2025. It's 7:30. Notice of this meeting was published in the official newspaper and prominently posted in Borough Hall and filed with the clerk's office in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act. We have a big meeting tonight, a number of resolutions, a subdivision, and we're going to hear about the survey that was townwide over the last few months. So with that, let's get busy. I'll have a roll call.
Mr. Snyder? Here. No, he's not here. Mr. Kane. Mr. Hines? Here. Mr. Carnaval?
Here?
Mayor Koth?
Here.
Mr. Darian?
Here.
And Mr. Flynn.
Here. Mr. Darian, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Just bring your name, please.
The next order of business is the approval of the planning board meetings minutes from January 7th, 2025.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We approve the minutes. We'll move on to committee reports. Subdivision, site drainage, and soil moving. Mr. Carnaval.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're going to start with three resolutions. The first is calendar number S-134-25, Rodriguez, 472 Grove Street. Has everybody had a chance to read the resolution document? Are there any comments or questions? And I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution calendar number S-134-25.
I'll second.
All in
Roll
favor?
call? Yeah.
We'll do a roll call because I have to abstain.
Do a roll call.
Yeah.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Mr. Carnaval?
Yes.
Mayor Koth?
Abstain.
Mr. Darian?
Yes.
Mr. Fleggy?
Yes.
Mr. Forte?
Abstain.
Okay, next we have calendar number 159-24, Royal Wine and Spirits. Has everybody had a chance to review that resolution? And are there any questions or comments? Let me just check my notes. Counselor, we just have to add Mr. Forte to the voting roster. His name was left off, so that's the only...
I'm looking at it, I see it's incorrectly titled as 159-234, so I'll make that correct.
Oh, okay, thank you. I missed that. Okay, so with the edits, I would like to make a motion to approve resolution for calendar number 159-24, Royal Wine and Spirits.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Mr. Carnaval?
Yes.
Mayor Koth?
Abstain.
Mr. Darian?
Yes.
Mr. Flegging?
Yes.
Mr. Forte?
Abstain.
And lastly, we have a resolution for calendar number S-160-25, Habitat for Humanity. Everybody had a chance to review that resolution document? Are there
Yes.
any questions or comments? Counselor, I just had one, there was one nit. I think the word consist needs to be consists. That was the, I I just have an electronic version. I think it's on the second page. So I'd like to make a... Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution for calendar number S-160-25, Habitat for Humanity.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Mr. Forte?
Abstain.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Mr. Carnaval?
Yes.
Mayor Koth?
Yes.
Mr. Darian?
Yes.
Mr. Fleggy?
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Now we'll move to our applications. We have calendar number 158-24, Murphy, 798 East Drive. I'd like to ask the applicants to come to the table.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Thomas J. Barrett for the applicant.
Can you hear?
As you may appeared in December, but the professionals had not yet had the opportunity to review the submission.
Isn't that thing on the table supposed to work, Sam?
It doesn't work, but in case they use it.
Okay.
All right, it's on. Thank you. Anyway, so we did get the comments, we made the revisions that were requested, and we are prepared at this time to proceed with the application.
Great. Counselor, do we need to swear in Mr. Murphy?
No,
I
I
for-
don't think anybody's been sworn in.
Is this you?
This is, an honor, but actually, the first witness is going to be our engineer.
Oh, okay.
So please come up, Mr. McCarthy.
Raise your right hand. You swear or affirm any testimony given this matter will be true, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
State your name, spell your last name, please.
Sean McClellan, last name spelled McClellan.
Mr. McClellan, would you, tell the board of your qualifications?
Sure.
If you could just grab the mic. Thank you.
I graduated from New Jersey Institute of Technology in 1997 with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. I've been a licensed engineer in the state of New Jersey since 2004. I've testified at zoning and planning boards in Morris, Essex, Passaic, Hudson, and Bergen County, and I have been in front of this board before.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. McClellan, did you prepare a subdivision plan?
I did.
And that the plan you have on the,
It is. It's titled Minor Subdivision for Richard Murphy, and it's dated October 15, 2024, last revised January 16, 2025.
we should probably mark that as A1.
A1, please.
All right, Margaret. There we go.
Describe the property and the proposed subdivision, please.
Sure. So it's the property is 798 East Drive. It's in the R1 zone. As you can see, the property line is the dark blue line that goes around. You can see there's several curves. It's fronts on East Drive and so kind of like a corner lot. It's on East Drive and also on Golf Place. Currently, there is a single-family house on the lot. The lot is 37,125 square feet, where only 18,750 is required. So it's basically twice the size of what's required in the zone. All the other requirements meet the bulk table. There is an existing nonconformity that I'll talk about when we get more into the subdivision.
So if you would describe the proposed subdivision, please.
Sure. So we're looking to subdivide the lot into two pieces. The proposed property line is this dark red line right here. The existing home is proposed to stay. No changes will be made to that. We are seeking a lot area variance for the proposed lot, which is proposed lot 1.02, which is the upper lot here. We're proposing a lot area of 15,290 square feet, where 18,750 square feet is required.
In addition to that variance, are there any other variances that would be required if the board so fit to approve this application?
Yes, there are two other variances. The first variance is on proposed lot 1.02, or I'll refer to as the lot where the existing house is. And the setback on that lot is, side yard setback on that lot is 37.2. The side setback in the zoning table is 20 feet. But since we have a lot that has a larger street frontage than is required, there's another calculation you have to do. And when we do that calculation, the side yard setback becomes, for lot 1.02, becomes 40.1. So the side yard setback for the existing house is 37.2, where 40.1 is required. That's how it exists today, and that's how it'll exist in the future if we were to grant approval. The second variance is for the side yard, same thing, will be the side yard setback for the proposed lot. But like I said, the bulk table shows 20 feet, but because we have an extra large lot width, that calculation becomes 33.9 feet. So we're seeking a variance for the side yard for that as well, based on the larger lot frontage. And the reason we wanted the variance for that lot is because if we were to push the house further towards the east, we'd be pushing the house more into the sloped area, and we're looking to avoid as much disturbance of sloped areas as possible.
And have you had the opportunity to review the comments from the board's planner? Specifically, her report of January 3rd. All right, it asked that the lot width of 194.07 was incorrect, and have you corrected that in accordance with her comment?
I have, yes.
And similarly, you've already testified to that you've now shown the minimum side yard to be 40.11 feet per the ordinance because of the extended frontage. And have you cited the existing buildings within 200 feet of the property?
I did. I've located them all on the key map. They're the properties in blue.
And can you testify as to proposed driveway and curb cuts if the board grants approval for what we'll call the new lot?
Sure. So I kind of did a concept dwelling for the approximate size house I thought they'd put on the property, which is here in white on proposed lot 1.01. Based on the elevations, I came up where I thought the appropriate place to put the drop curb would be, which would be on the lot line closer to the existing house. I showed a concept driveway as well, and also approximate location where we'd have the drainage.
So again, if you could tell the board why you're proposing it in that exact location.
Sure. So before I knew that there was the extra side yard distance based on the lot frontage, The existing the side yard setback in the bulk table is 20 feet, so I put it on that 20-foot line, or a little bit in from the 20-foot line, because this area of the property is the flattest.
So
I'm sorry, this area of the property is what?
Is the flattest.
Flattest, okay, thank you.
So you're trying to avoid impacting the steeper portion of the property.
That is correct.
And what's the anticipated level of disturbance within the steep slope areas?
I don't think I put that on the plan. I kind of did. I did put it on the plan. So I kind of showed a silt fence where I think we'd be disturbing, and the total disturbance on the lot would be about 9,400 square feet.
And again, not knowing what's exactly going to be there, since there is no purchaser at this point, you anticipate that this, though, would be satisfactory to most people?
Yeah, we have a fairly nice building envelope with that request for variance for side yard, driveway. We would start it on we're higher up in the elevation. We'd have to work with an architect to get our elevations right to have a driveway pitch that was suitable and also, disturb as least of the slopes as possible. But I think it's definitely a buildable lot.
And would it be necessary for any of the existing mature trees to be removed?
Yeah, I don't think we would have to remove any of the trees on any part of the either lot. You can see there's not too many to begin with. Most of them are just off the property, on the property line, or down more towards Hemlock Drive down here.
Okay. And then on the comments from the board's engineer, the revised plans dated January 16th that were submitted to the borough, those were signed and sealed, correct?
Yes.
By both yourself and by Mr. Lantelm, the surveyor?
Correct.
And the revised comments indicated that the exact data concerning the curve data and the chord length need to be corrected. Have you seen that comment?
Yeah, I had a couple typos that I can correct, and I also need to provide the proposed chord data or curve data for the two proposed lots if approved.
And that's more of a technical nature, right? That doesn't really impact the subdivision?
No, I should have that right on the final plan.
No problem. So if the board were to see fit to approve it, you'd be able to amend it with no issue?
Correct.
So you've already testified. One of the comments was that provide testimony in regards to future development and how it would confirm. I'm sorry. Yeah, and how it will. It says confirm, but I believe it means conform with the required setbacks, and you've already testified to that.
Correct. Yeah, we would just seek the side yard variance for the new lot.
And one of the requests was that you submit a response letter which addresses each of the comments. That was done when you submitted the revised plans?
It was correct.
I believe that that addresses all of the issues that were raised. And anything was addressed, or everything was addressed and submitted or advised that, it would happen if the board were to see fit to grant the approval.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I think it would make sense for the board members to be able to ask questions after each witness testifies, although I am going to hold public comment until we've gotten through all the witnesses, if you're in agreement with that.
So you want to open it up to questions?
Yeah, for each of the witnesses while we've just heard their testimony. So we will start, Dave, with you.
Sure.
Sure. Thanks for the revisions. I think it was helpful as far as demonstrating what could fit on that parcel. I do have a couple questions. I think in your testimony you talked about the driveway and the suitability of that. Can you give us an idea? I mean, as it sits today, when I looked at it, it's about 70 feet deep and about a 10-foot elevation change, which gets if you were to hold the grades as it sits, that would be about a 14% slope driveway. What would you envision being done there as far as that driveway, and how would it get constructed? Would it be at grade with the house?
Sure. So I anticipate the driveway be less than 14% and have a lower garage and have more steps than normal up to the first floor. Without sitting with an architect, it's hard to say exactly how the house would look, but I always try and keep my driveways about 10 to 12%.
Okay. So you would keep it within the code requirements as far as a driveway. You would try to keep the slope down.
Correct.
Okay. So I guess it would be possible for the driveway, it may end up having retaining walls or different things would get worked into the situation to make it work to meet those grades.
It most likely is going to be retaining walls on the site.
And that's pretty typical for a property given the type of slopes that we have here?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. And then I think on here you had shown some drainage. Can you just walk us through that?
Sure. So for a house typically this size, most likely we'll take two 1,000-gallon seepage pits, and I just kind of showed those, far enough away from the house, also not in the steep slope area, and away from the property lines, what was necessary. So that will contain all the roof water, depending on for about the size house we put here, and water would go on the roof to the leaders into the seepage pits and then percolate into the ground from there.
Okay. And as far as the house that you have shown there, I mean, what's the approximate footprint of that?
That is, I think it's 50 by 35, so that's about 1750 footprint. So you're looking about a 3,200 square foot house.
Okay, so it's a good sized house. It's not a smaller house. So
yeah, I mean 1750
accommodate something comparable.
Yeah, so the FAR allows us up to 4,400 square feet. Now, just talking to people, and we're thinking about 3,500 square foot house or so.
Okay, but I guess based on the setbacks, if you needed to, that building footprint could become larger and still meet within the setback requirements for the property.
Right. So yeah, 1750 would meet this. We could go larger if we needed to, or I just show as a triangle, but there might be little extensions for make the architecture look nicer. But we don't plan to exceed any of the bulk variances on this property, except for the side yard setback.
Thank you. And then, as far as the property itself, are there any title restrictions, covenants, or easements that you're aware of on the property?
To the best of our knowledge, we don't know any easement restrictions or covenants.
Okay. Those are all the questions I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Caroline?
Thank you for the revisions to the plans. You really followed our letter, and I appreciate that.
No problem.
It makes it much easier. I think at the last meeting, we talked a little bit about why the lot size, why the subdivision line was drawn in the location that it was.
Right.
So you actually, there's no way for you to have two conforming lots, correct? You don't, for area, you don't have sufficient acreage.
It was 18,750. We can get, no, let's see.
You're a little shy.
A little shy, yes.
Right. So you're a little shy, so you can't have two conforming lots because of the size of the current that
Correct.
exists today. But the lot area as you proposed it is not exactly equal between the two, correct?
Yes.
Right. So I think we talked a little bit, but we didn't fully finish the discussion about if there were limitations that resulted in the lot line location as to where it's proposed.
Yeah, so the limitation is the rear yard setback. I kind of kept it, if you look at if you look on East Drive, the back right corner of the house is right at the 25-foot setback line. So that's what's kind of determined where we started this line. And for planning purposes, we kept it as one single line going across. The only way we could have squeezed a little bit more area out of this would be to offset this raised deck 25 feet and somewhere around the middle of the property line come across like this, and that would have gotten us about another 700 square feet or so. But we thought, well, there'll be planning testimony later, but we thought a single line without a jog in it would be the best alternative.
Okay, even if you had 700 square feet, you're still not, well, you're closer, but
We're
you're.
closer to half than, yeah.
Yes, you're closer, but not all the way. So you said there's going to be planning testimony on this as well?
Correct, yes.
Okay, then I'll wait. Thank you.
Steve, any questions?
No questions. I just had a comment. Maybe the attorneys could get involved. But the first variance for the setback on the existing house, there's no construction being done on the house. It complies with the setbacks. The house was built prior to the code change for that requirement. So is there a need for that first variance?
I believe there is, because it's driven by this proposal. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions, Steve?
No, none.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Giblin?
No.
Mr. Chairman?
No, I have no questions.
Any questions from the members of the board?
I have one. I know the driveway is theoretical right now. Is there adequate room so that there's offset from the driveway across the street? I mean, if we looked at that alignment, I would presume you would not want them to meet head on head, right? I think it's far enough down the block.
Oh, you mean on the other side of Gulf Place?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the driveway comes in on that lot.
It is.
It's offset.
It's
right?
offset.
Yeah, okay.
Perfect.
And then my only other question, I think I know the answer, but I just want to ask the question, is that depending upon how much the driveway may be depressed with the use of retaining walls, you wouldn't see any issues with sight lines coming down off around the curve for a car exiting the driveway, would you?
No, the retaining walls would be fully on our property, and none of it would extend into the right of way.
Okay. That's all I have for now.
Okay. Seeing no further questions, you may call your next witness.
Thank you. Mr. Burgess.
Raise your right hand, please. Swear or affirm any testimony given this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but true, self God.
I do.
State your name and spell your last name, please.
Joe Burgess, spelled B-U-R-G-I-S.
I'm going to give the
I
board.
think the board will accept him as an expert.
Agree. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
I think most of you know me. Okay, I was asked, good evening, first of all, and good to see you again. I was asked to comment on the variance requests. The engineer gave you a pretty good description of what's being proposed, so I'm not going to bother to go over that again. The real focus of my testimony was with respect to, the zoning ordinance, the master plan, and how we meet the statutory criteria. The statutory criteria, as you know, is a twofold test. The positive criteria, an applicant can show that either there are physical features that affect the ability to comply, or alternatively, there's a public benefit that will accrue from the result of the variance being granted, and it's called the C1 and the C2 variance relief, respectively. And in many regards, we address both C1 and C2, and I'll explain that as I testify. I do have another exhibit, so I'm going to remove this for a moment. Oh, I think you're the engineer.
Joe, would you mark it as A2, please?
Okay. There you go.
Thank you.
So A2 is the tax map of this area. The subject site is shown here in a black highlighted area. North points to the left of the exhibit. And what I wanted to do is find out how do the proposed lots, especially the one that's non-conforming in area, fit in with the established development pattern. The reason why that is key is because one of the prongs of the test is to point out how a project fits in with the established development pattern. The reason why that's critical is your master plan highlights that as one of the specific goals and objectives of planning in the municipality. So what we did, we highlighted those properties, and we used 15,000 square feet as a break point, primarily because of the lot sizes in the area. So we looked at all the lots along the east side of Hemlock, directly opposite where the undersized lot will be located. We also looked at the properties going down East Drive and up Golf Place. We did not bother to look at the lots along Kinderkamak. Obviously, they're small, but they're a block removed from the subject site, so I didn't want to, overburden the argument. But effectively, what we found is that all the colored lots are, in fact, less than the minimum required by code. In fact, most of the lots all of the lots in yellow are less than 15,000 square feet. Some are as small as 11,000 square feet. The ones in a light orange tone are between 15,000 and 870 square feet. But all of those lots also are non-conforming in terms of lot area. We also looked at the properties along Park Place, Goffle, and then down East Drive. Those are lots that are, in fact, conforming. Most of the lots are the minimum 18,750 square feet. A few of them are somewhat larger, around 20,000 square feet, 22,000 square feet. There are 3 lots that are oversized, and there's only 3 lots that are, in fact, larger than the subject site of 37,125 square feet. That includes Lot 8, directly opposite, catty corner from the subject site, Lot 7, down East Drive, and, Lot 5, right next to that lot. But other than that, all the lots shown in color are, in fact, non-conforming. Because of that, we can conclude, obviously, that the proposed lot of 15,830 square feet fits in with this established development pattern. And interestingly enough, the orientation of that smaller, I keep calling it a smaller lot, that is still larger than all the lots across the street, but its orientation is clearly primarily to those properties, so clearly it fits well within the context of the Hemlock Park Place corridor. Why is all that important? In terms of the negative criteria, the 2 prongs are that you have to show there's no substantial detriment to the public good. And in large measure, when we talk about public good, and as expressed in your master plan, public good relates to reinforcing the established development pattern. And given the fact of our proposed lot size in relation to the lot size directly across the street and up and down the street, we feel we meet that test. The other prong of the negative criteria is there's no substantial impairment to the intent of the master plan. Now, the master plan has a number of goals and objectives. There are 4, which I think are notable in this particular case. For example, one talks about providing adequate light, air, and open space. And in this instance, other than that one side yard that had been mentioned earlier, which is actually a pre-existing condition, not being affected by the application itself, we comply with all the other setback requirements of the ordinance. A second goal talks about promoting the establishment of appropriate population densities. The master plan designates this area in the low density 1 land use category that talks about a density of 2.3 units to the acre. We measured the entire area. as it's shown on the exhibit, it was identified in this area, not including Kinderkamack Road. And the density in the area is 2.03 to the acre. Our proposed subdivision is completely consistent with the master plan recommendation of 2.3 because we come in at 2.34. So it's consistent with that. The third goal we want to highlight talks about preserving and protecting the residential character and existing development of the community while limiting intensities of use to the levels prescribed in the land use plan. We are completely consistent with that, being at 2.3 to the acre. And then finally, there's a goal that talks about ensuring that proposed development is responsive to the borough's environmentally sensitive features. There are no wetlands or floodplains on the site. The one sensitive environmental feature is the one Mr. McClelland had mentioned in terms of the steep slopes. That's generated that one area of relief because we were pushing the building to one side to avoid the steep slopes, the steepest slope conditions of the property. So within that context, we think we adhere to that goal as well. Bottom line to it all, we think there is the positive criteria that's met. There's physical features that affect the ability to comply in the one instance, being that slope issue that I just mentioned. The other prong, that the public good being affirmed, is in fact affirmed by the fact that we have a proposed subdivision that in the end results in a design that is consistent and compatible with the established development pattern. I promised Steve earlier I'd be brief. I think I was. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Caroline, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Thank you. For this exhibit, I've been trying to sort of count sideways. Can you tell me how many lots are yellow and how many lots are orange, please?
5 lots along Hemlock are yellow, and then there's 4 lots, 3 on Hemlock and 1 on East that are orange.
Thanks. That's what I thought, but I just wanted to confirm. So, and then can you just point again, please, to where the new proposed lot is going to be? So that
The lot line is roughly there.
Lot line. So above your hand is where the new,
Yes.
theoretically, the new lot, and at some point a new home will be
Correct.
going is right there.
Yes.
So to your point, across the, actually almost the majority of the lots across the street, is this your testimony that the majority of the lots across the street don't meet the area in question that's
All
required?
of the lots from lot 21 down to 14, none of these meet the area requirement. And none of them, if I'm not mistaken, I'll check in 1 second, none of them are as large as the 18,750 square foot lot being proposed. Excuse me, the 15,800 square foot lot being proposed.
So the yellow lots are,
No more than 15,000 square feet.
so yellow lots, you said some are as small as 11,000 square feet to no more than 15,000 square feet. That's correct?
I do stand corrected. These 3 lots are about 16,000 square feet each.
But still not, they still don't meet the requirement of the 18
Correct.
of the zone district. They're still
I'm just correcting my
substandard.
testimony because I had said none of them are as large as our 15,800, but these are all 16,000 square feet. Still less than code.
And then you're proving the variances due to C1, due to the physical features on the property?
The
Is that-
C1 relates to this side yard setback and the need to protect the environmentally sensitive features. The C2, the public benefit, is that we're providing a lot that is consistent with the neighborhood in which this new house would be oriented to.
So the C2 is for the area, the lot area?
Yes.
And that's because the lot that's being created is consistent with the neighborhood. So do you think that offers a better development scenario than because of the lot areas?
Yeah, certainly. And it might have been you who had asked the question about, if you shift this proposed subdivision line and break it up so it comes in at an angle at a certain point. As a general proposition, the ordinance talks about creating a uniformity, and that's what a straight line does here. Having a property that has a very irregular rear yard, I know it can create some conflict with neighbors sometimes as to where your property line is. So having a straight line, if somebody wants to put a fence, for example, it makes it a very simple thing to do.
So it's a better development option, in your opinion?
Correct, yes.
So, and as I look at the subdivision map, I think as we indicated with the previous, with the engineer,
Thank you.
you physically can't create two conforming lots for lot area. If you're close, but you're not there, because you don't have enough area that you're starting with.
Correct.
In order, the way that I look at it, the options to create something that are more equal, either A, you're going to have a zigzagged sort of line, which as you described, or B, we're talking about removing improvements that are existing today, such as there's a wall, there's a patio, et cetera. We're talking about removing existing improvements.
Correct.
So those are the two options.
Yes, and by having that straight line, as I just discussed, it's much better than having that zigzag configuration, which, in the end for the future homeowners doesn't really do anything for anybody.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that's all.
Dave?
I have no questions.
Steve?
Nothing.
Mr. Giblin?
No.
Mr. Chairman?
No questions.
Anybody else on the board have any questions?
No questions.
Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Question for the attorney, not the planner.
For the application?
No, for ours.
Do you want to ask that now or?
We done.
Well, I think,
We can wait till the end.
okay.
Do you want to testify or just let it go?
Do you want me to?
No, because we don't want to get into the financial. Well, maybe I'll just ask you one question. If there's a purchase of the lot at this time, and your answer is no.
Do you have any other?
Just Mr. Murphy, I really only have one question for him, but you need to be sworn.
Raise your right hand. Swear or affirm any testimony given this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
State your name, spell your last name, please.
Richard G. Murphy, M-U-R-P-H-Y.
Thank you. Back with us, Mr. Barrett.
Yes, Mr. Gibbo. Mr. Murphy, you're the applicant here, and I know one of the questions that had been raised previously is there a contract in place for the property, or?
No, there is not. There's no contract.
So at this point, you're not sure what anybody would want to do with the property in terms of developing?
I'm not sure what my wife and I will do with a subdivided property.
Okay.
We may market it, we may keep it, but it adds value to the property.
Thank you. I have nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I just have a follow-up comment.
Please.
Should the board act positively, act in favor of the application, and should there be a point at which a house is built on the site, there would need to be fees paid to what's called the Affordable Housing Trust Fund for the development of a new house. I just want to make sure since that's not part of the application, I just want to make sure the record's clear like that. Okay.
Is it on?
Do you want me to say that again?
No.
So, yes, there will be an affordable housing trust fund fee due to when they're at the, should the board act favorably on the application, should there be a new house built on it, there would be required fees for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund that I don't believe would be collected at this point because there's no construction proposed. This application is solely for a subdivision.
We take care of that in our office when the permits are being through plan review. There's a half of the a fee, which is I think 1.5%, would be presented before the permits were issued. And then upon completion, before a certificate of occupancy, the final payment would be made.
Before I open it up to the public, Mayor, you said you had a question?
Yeah, I just had a question that basically is one that applies to both lots. So, Brian, it's adequate to state that the existing home on the property prior to subdivision could be improved if the current owner or a new owner wanted to add a second floor or whatever, because it has adequate reserve within the property to fall within the coverage requirements, bulk requirements, FAR, and so forth. But the subdivision of the property would limit basically both
Yes.
to conform with reduced lot sizes, and in most instances limit the ability for the existing house to be improved further, period.
And you would also have a much closer side yard setback on the one side because
Right.
of the property line. So yeah, it would be a substantial impact to the existing property.
Right. My other question about the proposed lot, not knowing how it's to be developed, since variances will be given for this approval, is there a way, or does anything prohibit a new property owner who acquires that lot and moves to develop it from coming to seek additional variances? Right? Like, I don't have an issue rendering my vote on sensible variances as presented. But for me, it's kind of the unknown that I would hope a developer of this lot, if that's the way this moves, would not come back before the zoning board in this instance and say, hey, I want 6 new variances because what I want to do, the lot's undersized for.
Two things, Mayor. I would think, number one, that it would be difficult, having just asked for and received subdivision with clearly a building envelope that you could put a house on. The testimony here today would make it difficult for somebody to request those variances and put on a sufficient case for them, but they would be permitted to go before the zoning board. There is no prohibition against someone going before the zoning board and seeking those variances at another date.
Right, because just to point out for the board's sake, the lot, and again, I don't have an issue where the lot line is. I think it's the most sensible place for the application, but the new lot that's created is, if I'm reading this right, it's almost 5,000 square feet shy of
3,000.
3,000, right. So that's still pretty substantial in terms of the size of the lot as it relates to what somebody may want to build. Let's be honest with ourselves. People aren't building smaller today. Somebody will most likely want to come in and build a lovely new home here and try and, maximize their ability. But I would hate knowing that we're giving variances to create this parcel. We're potentially creating the situation for additional variances to be heard later on. But you're saying there's nothing that can be done at the time to prohibit that in the future? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, do you have any questions? Or
I just want to make sure I understood correctly that for the proposed lot size, it would support, without variance, a house of about 3,500 square feet. Is that what I heard?
Correct.
Which is not a small house. I mean, well, at least I don't think, but what's the applicant, what's the square footage of your house?
2,700.
2,700.
It's a weird situation. It's built into a hillside, so.
No other questions.
any other members of the board have questions before I open it up to the public? So I'd like to open up to the public for any questions or comments. Hearing none, I'd like to close public comment. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve calendar number 158-24, minor subdivision, 798 East Drive, with any requirements that have been discussed tonight, although I don't think there were many attached to this application, so.
I'll second.
Steve?
Yes, Mr. Snyder will be filling in for Mr. Kang and Mr. Forte for Mr. Dressel. Mr. Forte,
Yes.
Mr. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Hines,
Yes.
Councilman Carnival,
Yes.
Mayor Koth,
Yes.
Mr. Darian,
Yes.
and Mr. Flegg.
My answer is yes, but, sometimes I think just some comments would be helpful in this situation. I visited the property prior to the holidays, and although the topography is a little different, it's interesting. I think that the subdivision would create a nice street front. I really do. And although the lot would be non-conforming, I do think that some development there would fit in. In addition, I do not think the subdivision will create a substantial detriment to the public good or the zoning plan or the zoning ordinance, and so for that reason, I would approve, yes.
Thank you. Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Thank you
all.
very much. Appreciate your consideration.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
No, we don't need this.
Mr. Chairman, that's all we have for subdivision site drainage and soil moving for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Carnival. We'll move on to, Mr. Kang is not here, so we'll move to regional planning and coordination. Mayor Cope.
Thank you, Chairman. The only thing I'll talk about is the borough's affordable housing obligation and the number we were presented. Perhaps it might be best if I put Caroline on the spot to just describe the process the borough went through recently with regard to the number that was prescribed for Oradell and how we answered that and why we came to that conclusion. If you'd be so kind, Carol.
Thank you, Mayor. My pleasure. I would like to just take a minute and pull up your memo because I want to make sure I get the numbers right. I think I remember your numbers, but I don't want to say anything on camera that might be an incorrect number.
Our numbers were 186, and we felt that there was a necessary reduction of 12 units based on some errors on DCA's part or oversight, I guess I would call it, in developing their 186 requirement.
Right, then I can speak. My concern was the number, exactly.
I remember them.
So,
Thank you. So, to the mayor's point, there was a deadline that was established by the new affordable housing legislation that was amended the Fair Housing Act. That deadline required that by January 31st, municipalities adopt a binding resolution that stipulates what their affordable housing obligation is. And the resolution also had to be filed in a couple of locations and posted, and there was a DJ action, an action of declaratory judgment that also needed to be filed. Those actions needed to occur 48 hours after the resolution was adopted, which, if I'm remembering correctly, was last Tuesday night. I think that was at your council meeting last Tuesday, correct? Correct. So the way that the obligations are calculated is it's a regional obligation. I think I spoke about this here maybe 6 months ago. And the regional obligation is then filtered down to the municipality by a series of factors. Bergen County in Oradell is located in Region 1. The regional obligation for Region 1 was 27,743 units. That number I remember without checking my memo. It is the largest of the regional obligations. There are 3 factors that were considered. There is a income capacity factor, that is census data. There was a non-residential valuation factor, that is equalized, that has to do with tax assessment information, and there's what was called the land capacity factor. DCA calculated all 3 of those factors, averaged them into one number, applied that number against the 27,743, and came up with the obligation of 186, as the mayor indicated. The DCA obligations were, I believe, non-binding is the term that they utilize, and municipalities had the opportunity to review the data and determine if they were going to utilize DCA's obligation or utilize an alternate obligation, and what was the reason for utilizing that obligation, a different alternate obligation. So initially, when we looked at the obligation, the census data was correct for Oradell as it was for every other municipality we were involved with. The non-residential information, the tax assessment information, was correct for Oradell as well as the other municipalities with which we were involved. The land capacity was the factor that was more, let's say, subjective. DCA utilized NJDEP aerial mapping to determine the land capacity factor, and there were properties on, and let me backtrack, the land capacity factor is supposed to identify properties that would be vacant and developable and therefore would add to or contribute to a municipality's affordable housing obligation. We reviewed each of those lots individually. We participated in multiple meetings with Mayor, Councilman Carnival, Planning Board Chairman, attorneys, et cetera, multiple meetings, and had multiple discussions. And what the end result was, there were properties on your land capacity that DCA considered when calculating your obligation that were either part of an existing recreation site, or that had environmental features, or that were already identified as an affordable housing site in a prior plan. So upon removal of those properties, to the mayor's point, that did result in a 12-unit reduction to your obligation. And I believe that was what was recommended to go forward with, and that is what was in the binding resolution that the borough adopted. It is somewhat interesting that within the 3 factors considered, the land capacity that was so small that was identified for Oradell, I believe it was 3.059 acres that were identified in Oradell, that removal of much of that only reduced your obligation by the 12 units. So the other factors were just so, they were larger, so they therefore contributed more to your obligation.
Thank you. So to carry on from what Caroline just described, there is the committee she's mentioning is an affordable housing subcommittee that was appointed by me and ratified by the council. It includes various council of the borough as well as Councilman Carnival, myself, the planning board chairman. And the status of those meetings will be reported regularly here and at the council level by myself. We are now on, there is a month-long period where there can be a contest to our challenge of that number. But while that is occurring, we are going to be moving in rapid fashion towards preparing the land use element of the affordable housing plan of our master plan, and seeking a vacant land adjustment as part of that process. And that is to be concluded and submitted no later than the end of June. So not a lot of time. There'll be a lot of work in short order, but that's where we're at. And as some of you may know, the borough is still party to some litigation out there that's contesting the method by which this is all being done. As I've said previously, I'll say again, those are separate paths that the borough is engaged in, and we're working to figure how to meet our obligation while standing up for our beliefs that, you know, the process by which this was done could have been better. So that's all we have to report on regional planning coordination at this time, Chairman.
Oh, Mayor, what was the number that Laurel came up with?
174.
74?
I believe,
174.
Yeah, 174.
Yes, and to the mayor's point, this, Oradell has always had a vacant land adjustment with the recognition that, that it's a built-out community.
Right.
And this process does not mean that, that is not available. In fact, that and any other crediting or adjustment that is out there remains available. This process is solely for the identification and stipulation of its affordable housing obligation. And I will note that had you not met that deadline, let me rephrase that, by meeting that deadline and doing all the filings that I indicated, the borough continues to maintain its immunity from exclusionary zoning litigation. So it was a very important deadline that, the town really worked very hard on.
So last thing just to mention, Chairman, for the board and the borough's edification is we have two very large undertakings that are before the board right now that are somewhat uncommon to occur at the same time. One is preparing the affordable housing plan as well as doing the re-examination of our master plan. And I know we're going to hear a presentation about the survey results, but these things really are meant to work hand in hand and will really speak to one another. So the board, I appreciate the board's commitment to continue this process of which is a unusually large undertaking with both processes occurring at the same time.
Thank you, Mayor. We're focused on that, and it's a good introduction to Master Plan, Open Space, Environmental, and Circulation Systems.
Sure.
Mr. Durian.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, just an update on our scheduling. We had a 7th subcommittee meeting on the 22nd of January. There we reviewed at the subcommittee level the preliminary survey results. And as a result of that meeting, we also discussed dates when we're going to meet regarding not only the survey, but also revising the wording and the structure of our master plan. So with that said, I'd like to introduce Francis Reiner from DMR Architects. He's the one who put together the survey for us, and we're deeply appreciated for all his work and his efforts. And tonight he's going to be presenting the results of the survey.
That's good.
What do I need to do in terms of?
It's up.
Good.
There you go. Snap your fingers.
Okay, great. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for having me this evening. Fran Reiner with DMR. I'm here tonight to present to you the survey results of the re-examination survey that we sent out in December. So just a little bit background, our team, myself, I'm a licensed landscape architect, professional planner, been with DMR for almost 18 years now. I'm director of planning and a partner. Dan Halbin and David Trost are also on my team, specifically working on this. We're a 45-person planning and architecture firm. We've been working in Bergen County for over 18 years as a planning consultants and redevelopment consultants for over 20 municipalities that we're currently working with. And we're planning board planners for 5 municipalities. So what that's all to say is that we do this a lot. We do this in a lot of locations. We have been working on and just completed the Ridgefield reexamination report. We just completed the Englewood master plan, as well as the Denellen master plan, and we're currently working on the Garfield and Paramus reexamination studies. So I thought I'd start by saying what a reexamination study is and what that report means. It's a policy document. It's driven by the planning board. The planning board runs this process. And what it does is it establishes goals and objectives for a 10-year period. It's a basis for policy decisions that the mayor and council will make, as well as for investments that the municipality will make, in addition to ordinance changes that will be recommendations as a part of this plan. It validates zoning, and so it's a requirement of the state. The last one that you had adopted was in 2018-19, and as I indicated, it is required currently to be updated every 10 years. It used to be every 6 years, but now it's every 10 years. What our reexamination study will not do is it's not going to address the fourth round housing plan. That's what Carolyn's going to be working on. We're going to be working close together in terms of the language and what the requirements are. But Carolyn's report will be really detailed regarding the fourth round affordable housing requirements. There are 6 mandatory components to a reexamination study. They're identified here. Basically, it talks about what the problems and objectives are from the last reexam, what the extent those problems have or objectives have changed, what significant changes in terms of demographics and policies have changed over the time since the last examination. Section 4 really is the critical piece. It is the section in which you identify recommendations moving forward on what you want to see your vision for your community over the next 10 years. And then sections 5 and 6 are regarding identifying redevelopment plans that have been adopted, as well as identifying a new section that the state is required regarding electrical vehicle infrastructure. So with that, I wanted to kind of go through the survey. We had 33 questions. It's an extensive survey in terms of what we've done. We've been doing surveys for the better part of 15 years through the municipalities we work with. 33 questions is a significant number. It was broken into 5 different kind of sections. We've identified them in color here so that when we go through the questions, you know which section we're talking about. So there was questions regarding the general residency and employment. We had questions regarding individuals' experience in Oradell, recreation facility questions. We had downtown Oradell questions, the CBD, Central Business District, and then we had some open-ended questions. The survey was open to the public on December 12th, and as of this morning, we had 1,016 responses. My presentation here this evening will be based on 1,001 responses. Over the last 2 weeks, we've gotten another 15 responses. I will say that that is an extraordinary number for a municipality of this size. To have over 1,000 is really unprecedented in the time that I've been doing this over the last 15 years. Municipalities of this size, we typically get in the 400 to 600 range. If we're at 600, that's really a great set of responses. The fact that in over about 4 to 5 weeks, we had over 1,000 responses across the holidays is really extraordinary. And so that means that there's a lot of good input, but really all it is input, right? This is just one basis of information. There are a lot of other pieces of information that we'll be looking at, including pulling apart your old master plan, looking at the downtown plan that you worked on, as well as working with you as a board to identify what the other potential recommendations will be for the document. So I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. Obviously the first few questions are going to be about the general residency. We had 90% of our responses, over 90% of our responses lived in Oradell. And then you can see we broke them down by the highest to lowest percentage. So 37% lived in Oradell more than 20 years, followed by 1 to 5 years at 19%, 11 to 20 years at 18%. And so on down the line. What I will say is that that's pretty typical for our communities, which is that most of these surveys, most people live in a community for a substantial period of time. The 1 to 5 years, when you do these surveys, you generally don't have the second most number of people that you would typically see more than 20 years, and then 11 to 20, and then 6 to 10, followed by the 1 to 5, which means you got a lot of responses from people who recently have moved to the borough, which I think is really good. For those who lived less than 5 years, where did you move from? You can see elsewhere in Bergen County, and then elsewhere in New Jersey, followed by New York City. Again, in terms of Bergen County type of surveys that we've done in other communities, the movement from New York City, I think, is probably related a lot to COVID. And we would not have typically seen that high of percentage in previous types of surveys. Your age, again, 35 to 49 being the most, is a little bit different than what we typically see. Over 50 to 65, and then over 65 is usually where we get the most responses in these types of surveys. So again, I think what you're getting is a good cross-section of younger adults, likely with kids that are either in the school age kind of range, and then 50 to 65 and over 65, put those together and they comprise an equal amount to the 35 and 49-year-olds. What type of home? I think this is fairly common. They're 89% with single-family detached. The other types is 1.5%, and the difference to get to 100% is that some people just didn't answer, said not applicable. So that's why it says 89 and 1.5, and that doesn't add to 100. So we're really just taking the biggest ones. Rent or own, again, almost 88% are ownership. That would be what you would think. 1.5 is rent, and again, the others would have responded as not applicable. How many individuals live in your home? Again, 4, then followed by 3, 2, and 5. Again, I think that plays into the demographic, the 35 to 49-year-olds being the component that answered the highest percentage. I think that's why you see the highest percentage of 4 and 3. Typically, we would see 2 being 50 and over. That would be typically the group that answers the most percentage. But because this one answered 35 to 49 is the most, I think that's why we have a lot of home ownership that has 4 individuals in them. Primary work location, Bergen County, 19%, New York City, 19%, home office, just under 19%. So you can see, kind of a really broad range of where people live, meaning also where people commute to and from. And I think you'll find that some of the answers regarding traffic and concerns about traffic relate to the fact that people are working in Bergen County in the office, so in New York City, so there's a lot of kind of commuting back and forth. Do you own a business in Oradell? This is what we would have anticipated. 94% answered no. Question 10 was this. Now we're into the experiences of Oradell. So this is now the experiences in Oradell. Where do you get your information about the community and programs? And we asked the respondents to select all that apply. This is just more informational to the borough, to the mayor and council. It shows you where people are getting their information, and I think that's important because as you want to reach out to the public, not just for this process but for future projects, here's where most people get their information from, social media being the most, the Oradell e-alert being the second, followed by word of mouth, and the borough website. We've put the next series of questions together because they're really linked. So question 11 and 12 kind of go together. So question 11 was, what do you like most about Oradell? And it asked to select the top 5. We've highlighted, in this particular case, just the top 4, but in most of them we've highlighted over 25%. So what people like most is the location, the school system. I will say that there was a number of concerns in the written responses about the schools. I'll get to that at the end. Neighborhood, what you like most, quality of life, followed by public safety and public transportation. And then question 12 was, what do you like least about Oradell? Again, the top 5. And so when you look at 12, you'll see the top 4 answers are really the bottom 4 answers of the previous question, right? So what you like least, people are concerned most about affordability, about the downtown area. And again, this came through fairly clearly in the written responses that we got at the end of the survey. Also, at least the businesses in terms of the number and variety of them, as well as the quality restaurants. And you can see kind of the percentages that are linked to those 2 questions. So on 11, the ones that are highest are the lowest on 12, and the ones on 12, the highest are lowest on 11. So that's kind of how they go together. Question 13, if you live in Oradell, which of the following had the greatest impact on you, your community, your friends, and family in recent years? And so we listed all of these as a part of the questionnaire and asked them to respond with the top 3 selections. And the greatest impact that people indicated was cost of living at 64%, followed by traffic on the major roads, so Oradell Avenue and Kinderkamak, that being the major road traffics, and then cut-through traffic, which would be more of the single-family residential streets, was followed by at 37%. On 14, it says, if you live in Oradell, what are you most concerned will affect you and the borough in the next 10 years? So the first question was, in the past, what has affected you? 14 is more about what you think will be the thing that you're concerned the most about moving forward over the next 10 years. And so the main concerns, again, I think were fairly consistent with 13, and increased taxes was at almost 73% of the public had concerns or have a concern about increased taxes over the next 10 years, about overdevelopment at 48%, traffic, again, on the major roads of Oradell and Kinderkamak, a declining number of businesses at 40%, overcrowding of schools at 33%, and worsening flooding at 26%. We then asked if individuals or the public thought that the borough provided adequate facilities for adults. The responses were predominantly no or not sure. So almost 50% of the survey results indicated that they did not believe that there were adequate facilities for adults. Only 13% believed that there were, with a good percentage of people not sure, frankly. 16 was, if you responded no to the previous question, what facilities are lacking that should be considered in the future for adults? And so the responses were more and better dining opportunities at 51%, access to public parks and open space at 50%, more walking paths, which coincides pretty similar to the access to public parks and open space, as well as a rec and community center at 34%. And then so on down the list, we had some passive and some active ones as well, but you can see how they dramatically drop off to 17% after the rec and community center. Does a borough provide adequate facilities for children under the age of 18? This was, again, almost 43% of the responses were no. 26% were yes, and then 20% were not sure. So depending on how you want to look at it, if you say not sure, that could be added to the yes, or it could be added to the no. So I think the responses were, that there are not enough facilities for children. And then if you responded no to the previous question, what facilities are lacking that should be considered for children? The top 3 responses were rec and community center. This was, again, a predominant statement within the written responses to the last couple of questions. But almost 42% of the people indicated that rec and community centers were lacking, access to parks and open space at almost 31%, and a multi-purpose facility with music and or arts was at 28.5%. And then after that, you drop down to 18% for indoor pool, pre-K facility, playgrounds. All of those are in the kind of teens in terms of the needs. If you put all those together, obviously they make up a lot, but these were the 3 major ones that came across in terms of the questions. The next group of questions were about the downtown. And so question 19 was, how often do you visit or shop or go to businesses in the downtown on average? 1 to 2 times was 32% or almost 32%. Rarely was 27.5%, and 3 to 5 times was 24.8%. And then what would you like to see in the downtown? And we, again, listed a series of items, and the top responses were restaurants. And again, this was Also indicated within the written responses, bar, pub, microbrewery represented almost 60%, a grocery specialty market at over 50%, retail goods, clothing and books, almost 40%, community events and services, 31%, and public park and open space at just under 25%. And then again, you can see the rest of them kind of listed below in terms of where they came across in terms of the responses. Question 21, again about the downtown. Is there adequate parking available in Oradell? And this asked to people to choose all that apply. The overwhelming response is that there was not enough parking for the businesses in the downtown, that there was enough parking for residential neighborhoods, and there was enough parking for commuter parking. So the overwhelming, kind of answer here is that there was a thought, perceived notion that there's not enough parking in the downtown for businesses. The next question asked about parking garages, which identified the fact that they're expensive to build. Didn't obviously qualify it, other than trying to get some, basic information from the public in terms of a reaction, and whether or not there was a need to build one in the downtown. And the overwhelming responses were no, that there was not a need to build one in either for businesses in the downtown or for commuter parking. You could see that those were in the 62 and 58% range. Question 23 was regarding the train station. So we asked if the train station should, and then gave three options. The first being keep the train station in the current location, regardless of the traffic impact on Oradell Avenue. Obviously, when the train stops, it stops access and traffic from Oradell Avenue, which causes backups and traffic issues. But the overwhelming response was that almost 56% of the people had indicated they wanted to keep the train station in the current location. 30% indicated that they would advocate to move the train station towards the senior center and the municipal parking lot area in anticipation that would clear Oradell Avenue open once the train passed it or before the train got to it, so that would allow better traffic movement. Almost 31% indicated that they would advocate for that, and then advocate to close the Emerson and Oradell train station and build a new one between the towns was only 13%. Would you be in favor of expanding the northern boundary of the CBD along Kindercamack Road from the Chase Bank towards northward to Soldier Hill Road, thereby allowing mixed-use property like what is in the current CBD? This was a pretty shocking response that I did not anticipate. 2/3 of the respondents had indicated that they would be interested in expanding the downtown retail, ground floor, kind of Main Street from Oradell Avenue to Soldier Hill Road. So that was a pretty surprising response rate from my perspective. I think the only thing that I thought maybe was a cause for it was because, again, you had so many 35 to 49-year-old individuals that responded. You had a lot of people that were moving in within 5 years, and so maybe there wasn't the kind of lifelong stigma of that area not being that, and so people are open to it. That would be the only reason why I could have imagined that was that type of response. Question 25, would you be in favor of allowing small apartment buildings within single-family neighborhoods? The response was almost 70% no. I think no is good. Sometimes when you hear no, it's good. So this was clear. I think it was when you get to 70%, I think it's pretty clear that the response rate is that people don't want to see those small apartments in single-family neighborhoods. 26, this is regarding affordable and senior housing questions. Would you be in favor of allowing accessory dwelling units on single-family lots if it does not significantly change the appearance of the house or require on-street parking? And then we kind of defined broadly what an accessory dwelling unit was. And again, I think the responses were what we would typically see and what we've seen in other surveys in other communities. No was about 50%, and then yes, and yes with conditions combined was about 50%. Conditions being architectural design standards, being no on-street parking. All the parking has to be on the site. So So we've seen this in other communities where it's about a 50-50 split. 27, if you wanted to stay in Oradell after retirement, what kind of property would you consider moving in lieu of staying in your existing house? I highlighted the top three because they're all ownership, and I thought that that was the key response there, that people, what makes communities great is the ability to grow up in a community, have children in a community, retire in a community, and be around your friends and your family and people you've known your whole life, right? And so life cycle within a community and providing housing for life cycle within a community is really important for neighborhoods in Bergen County. And so I think that what I took out of this is that there is a desire for people to stay, but when people own a house, they want to move into something they own. They don't want to move into more of a transient type of rental. 28, would you be in favor of senior housing project within a single-family residential neighborhood? Again, I thought this was a little bit closer in terms of the responses that I would have anticipated. 54% said no, they would not be in favor of a senior housing project within a single-family residential neighborhood, whereas almost 46% said they would. They said yes, and yes with restrictions put together represented almost 46% of the responses. In 29, we indicated that there's a big push for apartments to build apartments, which set aside the 10 to 20% units for inclusionary affordable housing. As Carolyn had discussed previously, the state has put out a fourth round number, and municipalities are trying to deal with and understand how they can meet these state requirements. And so this question really goes towards that. And so in many towns, developers are converting office buildings to meet these requirements. And so the question is whether or not, for Oradell, our office zone extends along the eastern side of Kindercramack Road, just before the Hunting and Learn Center, northward to the Dairy Queen and Emerson. How would you feel about the possibility of these large properties being developed into apartments? And so you can see the responses are no, 36%, good idea, 20%, no, semi-concerned, 18%, no opinion. So what we did is we put together the two so you can just kind of see them. Very concerned and semi-concerned represented about 55%. Good idea and no opinion represented about almost 45%. And in question 30, would you consider allowing new large apartment buildings within the office zone if they were to contain additional amenities, such as public open space, access to the Oradell Reservoir? And again, when you kind of put the answers together, very and semi-concerned represent 50%, good idea and no opinion represent 50%. And really that's just, these are more just for informational standpoint. I think that it's an interesting response from the public, given how many that we got, over 1,000 different responses. Question 31, if you answered no to the question previously, where would you consider allowing new multifamily residential apartment buildings, which would include affordable housing? And then we asked people to choose all that apply. The main answer was not applicable in that they didn't want to answer. And then the next two I think are important. In locations that do not abut existing single-family residential, that is fairly common. You know, the objective of municipalities like Oradell are to protect the existing single-family housing stock as much as possible. So this answer is kind of right in line with what as a planner we look to do for communities. And then the other answer was within the downtown district above existing commercial uses. 32, these were written responses. So we asked an open-ended question: what do you want to see developed that is not currently within the Oradell community? And so out of the 1,000 people who responded, 455 people typed in an answer to this part. So there weren't these weren't categories that they. What we did is we read through each one of their answers and identified, where those written responses kind of fit into. And so out of those 455 written responses, 190 of them, sorry about that, 190 of them, included identifying wanting improvements to the downtown, including adding new restaurants and bars and more active nightlife within the downtown. Of the written responses, 143 of them talked about the desire to improve parks and open space, add community or rec center, and walking paths within their written response. We then had a number of responses regarding school improvements. There were some questions as to why there were not more questions about the school within this. Typically, a master plan does not necessarily include school as a major component, although it is critical. So, maybe that was an oversight in terms of the questions, but we did get we did get some written responses regarding that. We did get a number. Although it only says 23, nothing, and stop developing, I will say that those 23 people were adamant about that, and they were clear with their concerns about that, parking, and then working on the waterworks facility. We had another question, 33, which was very similar in terms of the responses to 32. There were 308 written responses, and it was almost, it was very close in terms of the feedback of what people had written about in terms of the downtown, the parks, the schools, stopping development, and traffic. So that's the questions and kind of the responses we got. We had, to be fair, we had a number of people say that they thought the survey was biased, and we're not happy with it. And we had an equal number of people said they thought the survey was awesome and they loved it. So I think that's kind of what you get when you do this type of survey. It is only one piece of the overall, kind of tool that we use to help put together and draft the document, the ultimate document, which is the reexamination study. But I think that given the amount of responses we got and the types of responses we got, it was helpful from our standpoint, just from an overall basis, to get knowledge of what the public was thinking and wants within their community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions by any chance?
I just had one. Fran, you had mentioned, by the way, thanks for doing the survey. You had mentioned that you and Caroline are sort of splitting duties. You're going to focus on the reexamination of the master plan. Caroline's going to focus on the affordable housing, but they're really interrelated because the planning board will need to come up with recommended changes to existing ordinances that will have a impact on our ability to meet our affordable housing obligation. Can you just comment on that in terms of the interrelation between the two projects?
Sure. So by June 30th, Caroline's going to be working on a fourth round housing and spending plan, and you're going to have to, the mayor and council are going to have to adopt that plan by June 30th. That will really identify how the borough is going to meet its affordable housing obligation over the course of the next 10 years. And then by, I think it's February of 2026, you have to actually enact ordinances for implementing the affordable housing. And not to get too much into it, but the 186 number or the 174 number that you put forth, you're really looking at how you implement 25% of that, not that whole number over the course of the next 10 years. And you have to have realistic projects to meet that 25% of that number. That's just how the state is kind of working through the mandates. So what Carolyn's going to do, and what we're going to work with her to do, is identify how you provide housing to meet that affordable housing obligation. So there may be scenarios in which you say that the borough wants to see you meet the obligation by putting housing in locations X, Y, and Z, and the master plan needs to reflect that as a part of it. So, and vice versa, if the master plan if the master plan says we want to put housing in X, Y, and Z, then the fair share, the fourth round housing and spending plan should also mimic that. So we're going to be working really together. Our recommendations are going to be very cohesive, and the good part is the board is going to manage both of those, in the same kind of time frame.
Fran, we fully expect to be able to have the reexamination complete by prior to June.
Yes. Yeah. So our goal, I didn't put next steps here, but our goal is to have at least a draft of the initial re-exam, which is going to have all 6 sections. And again, I will say that, sections 1, 2, and 3 are like all of just kind of data. 4 is the recommendations of what the borough wants. 5 and 6 are really redevelopment plans and the electric car vehicle. So 4 is that piece where we're going to say, here's what our recommendations are for our community. And so our goal is to have a draft to you in February so that the board can review that draft and we can start to have a really good conversation back and forth. We don't see any reason why that report isn't going to be done well in advance of June. And we'll be working with Caroline and with you to kind of make sure those work together.
Great.
I have a question.
I also just want to thank you, Fran. I mean, it's no small task to craft all these questions and review them and then get it out. And very pleased with the response that we got. So thank you.
Mayor, you have a question?
I do. So not to be the broken record and reiterate everybody else's thanks, but I mean, we could have picked a lot of different questions to put in this, but I think we had a nice mix of different things that we need indications on in terms of thinking about what we have to plan for, right? It's not, do we or don't we? We need to. And we need feedback from the residents. So I think this showed a nice representation of hot topics, if you'd call them that, and how the aggregate of our residents feel about that. So that's useful for me, both as a planning board member and as the mayor. One question I had, though, about the train station one, it's more your opinion than anything else. Do you think we could have maybe been clearer about that? And do you think people misunderstood the question to say, are we physically picking up the historic building and moving it, right? Versus maintaining that where it is, but you're going to embark and debark the train 1,000 feet north so that we can improve on one of your other concerns, which was traffic on the Oradell and Kinderkamak Road corridor. I don't know if it's something I'd love to dive a little deeper into understanding, because one seems to conflict with the other in terms of priority. And certainly we want people's input with this. But you also have to prioritize what are our goals here, right? So traffic is a pretty serious goal, I think, that the board needs to consider, because at various times of day, it's a parking lot around here. And that train, could do a better job of stopping clear of the intersection, but it doesn't. And if you live on that side of town, it can be a bear, right? And traffic in the morning is backed up into Hallworth. So I was just curious as to what you thought about maybe, did people think we're physically trying to move the actual building or just the stop?
Yeah, in retrospect, I think the question could have been clearer, and we could have better defined it so that the responses, we would have known exactly what the thought process was of the response. Right. I don't know if the respondents, some of them probably thought, yes, we're going to physically move it. Others thought, no, we're going to leave it in the same location. So I think that maybe the responses to that particular question are skewed because we don't have a real clear definition.
Yeah, so I would just say to the board, I think that's one of the things we should dive into more in dialogue as we move through this process, because I do think we need to do things about the traffic situation, right? And I want to be clear that the borough is committed to reinvesting in preserving the historic train station in its current location. But they may not be mutually exclusive of one another. There may be a more modern stop 1,000 feet north or somewhere else if that's what the data tells us makes sense. So I just want to put it out there for future discussion. I think it's nice to respond to each and every sort of question, but I think part of our duty is going to have to be to weigh what are priorities and how do we kind of gear our plan towards that. But really nice job, Fran. I think you guys did a great job. And Greg, nice job putting together with the subcommittee a nice forum to be able to get Fran direction he needs and move us along. While we were pretty sleepy last year, I don't envision meetings being canceled for the first half of this year because there may not be applicants. There's plenty of stuff for us to talk and deliberate over as our work's before us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Fran. I am very grateful for the work that you've done. We have a meeting scheduled for the 21st. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So for the subcommittee members here, we have our 8th meeting scheduled for the 21st, and we'll be going into that 4th section of the rewrite of the master plan. One comment, Mayor, on traffic. At one point, I pulled from a website traffic studies in and around town. I don't remember when it was. I think maybe during the Aura application, because I was curious to see the volume on Kinderkamak Road and the times. And I came across something very interesting, is that Oradell Avenue has about the same level of traffic as Kinderkamak Road. And I thought to myself, oh, that's crazy. I mean, we don't have that many residents on that side of town, but if you think about it, if you live in Dumont or Tenafly and you need to get to Route 17, and we've seen that with the flooding, there's only 3, roads: Old Hook, Oradell Avenue, New Milford Avenue,
River Edge Road.
and River Edge Road, 4. And that's a very large distance between them. That's it, going east and west. So, from a traffic perspective, it is a huge problem. So I know that was just on a side note, but Fran, thank you very much for your time.
Absolutely.
We look forward to working with you on our, the next phase of this study.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Any other board members? No. That's all I have, Chairman.
Thank you, Greg. Historical preservation, Mr. Carnaval.
Yes, I just wanted to let the board and the public know that this coming Tuesday at the mayor and council meeting, the architectural firm that we hired to do the renovation of the, update the architectural plans for the renovation of the train station is going to be giving a presentation to the mayor and council. So if you can attend or watch it on OPTV, I encourage you to do so. The plan looks very sound, and I think we are heading in the right direction in terms of being able to finally renovate this wonderful train station building that we have.
Thank you. Old business? A new business?
Yeah, I have some things, Chairman. We need a Class 4 member. Mr. Kelly is off, and usually we move alternates up. I don't know if they're, willing to do so, but we should look into that and look for alternates.
Yes, I spoke to the mayor about that.
Okay.
So the mayor needs to make a nomination, and the council has to approve it.
Yep, okay.
I do also want to thank Tom Kelly. I don't know if we ever did that publicly for serving on the planning board. I don't know how long he was on here, but he resigned when he was elected to the council, and I want to thank him for his service here.
The other thing was the soil move.
Not to interrupt, but just to answer your question, it's my intent to put Mr. Snyder before the mayor and council on February 11th to elevate him to a full member, and that would then follow with the appointment of an alternate to replace his current spot.
Great. Okay.
We will not have that for the 11th, but hopefully shortly thereafter.
Okay. The other thing is soil moving, the quantities and whether it goes to the board. The last board that was here made the recommendation to the mayor and council. I don't know whether we want to put another memo out in regards to what you think is needed in regards to that. And third thing would be subcommittee members. We can get a list of who's going to be on what subcommittees. We have, the chairperson, but we don't have who's going to be with them.
Okay, I'll work on that. We have. Do we have to vote on that?
No, you just put the word out and sort of talk about it and who wants to be on.
I think we have that.
I do have a list of who were.
Just have to define it. I'll get that done.
In the past year, so if you want to contact me. I can give you the
Good,
list.
perfect.
And the last thing is, we're trying to determine a way of getting a poll on who's going to be attending or not attending the meetings. So,
Can I speak to that? So
Yes,
Steve and I
please.
spoke to this earlier today. The zoning board found itself in an awkward situation at its last meeting where they were ready to advance an application, and unbeknownst to the staff, the board did not produce a quorum. It's kind of an awkward space to be in when you have an applicant and they're professionals who are being paid to be here, and we can't do our job. So I suggested to Steve investigating a few things at the council level. We're sort of trying to use technology, which is not new, but mainstream in business, i.e. Have his office perhaps test using Outlook as meeting invites so that as the invitees accept or decline the meeting, they have a running tally of who, should be in attendance. And if people haven't answered, then staff can perhaps follow up with a call or reaching out more directly with the board member. But I want to be really clear about something. I'm very appreciative for everybody's service. We're all volunteers here, including me. But if you want to be appointed for a board, it's understood you'll miss a meeting here or there due to business, family, or other commitments. You need to be here. If you're not going to be here, say you can't, and don't be on the board. Nobody's going to take it personally and look at you in a way that you failed to serve. But we need to function. This is serious stuff at both the zoning board and the planning board level. Even the Board of Health. If people want to be on these boards, we need people to, make a commitment. And that goes for all the people on the mayor and council as well. This town works on volunteers, right? We have 54 staff full-time in the borough. The rest of us are volunteers. We outnumber the staff 2-1. So, if people are coming to me saying, I'd like to express interest about being on a board, the first question I'm going to ask is, are you prepared to serve? And that means showing up and making an effort to be here. So, I'm sorry for putting that PSA out there because I know the majority of us do. I have no issue with people that miss meetings for, normal occurrences such as business, family, or otherwise. But, there are some people that habitually have not been at meetings, and that needs to change. So
there was a ordinance adopted, that I believe it's 3 consecutive meetings, and then you can be removed from the board.
It's a state statute.
Right. So I would give that individual a courtesy probably at the second meeting before they get there, having a discussion. But I didn't write the law, but we need to use it to guide us. I don't know if anybody else has any suggestions
Well,
or opinions
I don't
on
know
that,
if we've
but-
had an issue with that, at least since I've been chair last year. I know Vince Scalcione could not make today's meeting, and
And none of my comments are directed at him.
No, and he's one that always lets us know.
yeah, and I don't know where Mr. Kang is.
Mr. Kang also let me know.
Okay, so who else is absent tonight?
Mr. Dressel. Mr. Dressel, Mr. Scalcione and Mr. Kang.
Right. So just to be clear, Chairman, my comments are not addressed at any particular member for any particular absence.
No, I
We
understand.
have alternates in the instances that people have to be absent. I'm making a general plea. These boards are the more serious, authoritative boards in the borough, and appointment to these boards comes with, responsibility. So.
Well, I like the suggestion of just putting the meeting on Outlook. That's the email that the borough uses.
I think it's worth a try and see how it goes.
And let us all
I think the issue is it's a borough email, and not everybody is connected or into their regular email or their personal email. Sometimes you can, and I don't know how to attach it, but sometimes you can get a notification that way. But we'll try with the Outlook and the calendar and see how that goes.
And I think that's an important next step, too. As policy, if you're going to serve on a board, you need to use the borough email system so that we're all, in the same channel of communication.
Protect yourself, you know. Your device can be taken if you're using other means than the borough's email servers and such for communication, so.
Well, okay, with all that said, until the Outlook is up, I would ask the board then to please let Mr. Dupkin know if they're not going to be able to make a meeting
Or if
a
they
couple of
need an
days before.
Or if they need an email address from him at the borough to be able to do that.
Hey, Chairman, there's also in Outlook, there's a voting tool, so yes or no. So another alternative, if you can't get 100% cooperation on the email side of things, if people are going to use their own personal, they can have a voting tool where it says yes or no if they're going to attend, and then it'll go back to the originator and it'll have a list of who's going to be in attendance, assuming they respond to that.
Yeah, that's.
But that may be another option if, again, people don't want to use the borough email address.
So on the flip side of that coin, I've had the fortunate opportunity to serve this board for over a decade now, and I've only missed a handful of meetings, but I can't really recall ever not seeing Steve here. And
Thank you.
Talking about me?
I think you're paid. But Mr. Carnival has an impressive attendance record, and I'd like to just call that out. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Okay, any more new business? I'd like the board just to consider the hour that we meet at 7:30 on the first Tuesday of each month. And we're not going to talk about it tonight, but to consider whether we could revise that and potentially meet a little earlier, if that would work, or if it's a problem, and we keep things the same. And we can talk about that next meeting. And then with that, we'll open it up to the public.
All it's doing is 50 Beverly Road. I listened attentively to this survey, and I just want to say some of the things that struck me really. I just jotted a couple things down. The 35 to 40-year-olds, the new residents, it seems like maybe they're coming from an area where they had some of the things that we don't have here, and they want to see those things here from where they came, like bars and restaurants and stuff like that. But our town was a different town, and I think what attracted them was the way that our town is. Okay, and that when I came here, I wasn't looking for bars and restaurants. I wanted to have a family life, and I wanted to have my home. Yeah, that's one of the things. The other thing is the train. When the train comes in, and I've noticed that the trains that go north do block Oradell Ave. Most trains that go south don't block Oradell Ave. It's really only one way that I've seen. You know, and I just wanted to say that. And then the other thing that I really wanted to know, I don't know if you're free to tell me, is what was the cost of this? What did it cost? What did we pay this gentleman to do this analysis? And the thing is that when we're doing the master plan, and we're going to write the master plan up for zoning and variances, and there's going to be what I wanted to say, consequences, and the consequences are that we're going to make this master plan, and we're going to have our zoning laws. And then when people come here, then we say, well, we'll give you a variance from the zoning laws. So maybe we're not making good zoning laws. I don't know. Why do they have to have variances all the time? So if we make a variance, like we wanted to have a 15-foot buffer zone between commercial properties and residents. Now, this 90 Kinderkamack Road negated that. So now we opened up Pandora's box for the next person that's going to do something else on a commercial. Okay, so we're doing all of this work, and we're spending a lot of time and we're spending money, and then we're saying at the same time, it's kind of ironic. Now we're going to change it and do what this developer wants just because that developer wants it that way, but not us. And it's then when we go to talk about aesthetics, all right, and how the town looks, I think that's important how the town looks, you know? So I haven't, and the last meeting I didn't hear much about aesthetics. I mean, there were 4 or 5 people that came up here that spoke about aesthetics, but I didn't hear a little peep from the planning board on aesthetics. Nobody commented on that. I don't know. Maybe it's not your thing to comment on that. I don't know. Maybe you're not allowed to comment on aesthetics. I don't know, but I think it's important for the town. You know, and that's really what I have to say. I love this town, and you know, I don't want to see drastic changes. You know, I know that we have to build north, and we have to have affordable housing. Now we have a 174 units, it says, but there's also a 38 that's supposed to be from the Lawyers Institute of New Jersey, right? They said that our unit would be 38. You know, I think I emphasized this at the council meeting. Now, at the end of this month, we were supposed to give them a number. I haven't heard the number. Do we have a number? I don't know. I don't know if we have a number.
We said the number. The number was 174.
Right, that's the number that the planning board, but I don't know if you remember what I said about the lawyers.
That's not reality.
It's not reality.
That is a resolution that the governing body passed.
Oh, okay, because they said 38.
We feel this is a better methodology that would have produced that number if it were used for us. Yeah. So the 38 versus 186 is by applying a different methodology, which the borough said we felt is a better methodology. But if you'll remember, I've said all along, we're going to follow the law because that's what we're required to do, while standing up for what we think is a better way to do it at the same time. We don't have a choice to follow the law or not. Yeah. We can also advocate for better ways to do it. Hopefully somewhere something works out where there's a more advantageous solution. But if not, we have to plan for what we're required to do under the law.
Well, I read in the paper today that Paramus was way, way up there, and they got it down to 200 for Paramus, and that's a pretty big area. So I don't know what it's going to be here.
Yeah, I don't want to get into the back and forth, but the article said they agreed to 1,000 units.
Well, this I saw 200 in the paper today for Paramus. It was in the
I'm the borough attorney in Paramus. The number is 1,000.
Okay. Well, I don't know. Then the paper's wrong.
Apparently.
Maybe I should make a copy of the article and bring it in.
Fake news.
Or maybe I misread it. I doubt it, though. Anyway, the other thing is what's going to happen with this building that we're making on Reese Avenue? Is it going to be for a veteran or not?
I'll talk to you about that one-on-one.
Yeah. You know, I would hope it would be, and I feel I feel it's very crucial that Oradell does something for veterans. You know, we have a beautiful memorial area and everything with all the names and everything, but it would be good to do something also in that respect for housing for veterans.
Yeah, housing for veterans is important, but I'm also going to say housing for workforce housing for police officers, firemen, DPW employees, teachers. Yeah. The people that make our towns run is equally as important.
Well, there could be veterans that are also teachers.
Absolutely.
There could be veterans that are...
I'm just saying, it's not exclusive. We all have the greatest respect and reverence for veterans.
Yeah.
But there's also people that make towns go every day that don't make the kind of money that is required to live in these areas. And if we don't have these people as part of our community, we're not going to have services provided. We're going to be at a huge disadvantage.
Yeah, I'm not trying to argue with you, but my inner feelings is for a veteran that put his life on the line, I think that is more important than anything else, to put your life on the line for your country.
I respect your position.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Eileen Jones, Oradell resident. I just wanted to say that I'm glad that the mayor brought up the idea of that you don't necessarily, that the train station could stay where it is, but moving the area where the people actually board the trains so that the road isn't blocked. I do live east of the tracks. I live on Grant Ave, and the traffic in the morning because of the train is very bad. And I don't count them, but there seems to be more ambulances now going by up and down Oradell Ave and on Grant since Valley moved. There always were a lot, but it just seems like there's a little bit more. So they have to, the train does block the road, Oradell Ave, when it goes south. I don't know if every time, but most times it does. The train physically might not be there, but the rails are down, so you can't pass. And it's not good if there's a fire on that side of town, or if you're in an ambulance trying to get to the hospital and the train is blocking so you can't get through. So I think it would be beneficial and a safety measure to have the actual boarding of the train, or where you get your tickets further away from Oradell Ave. And thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Sam Tripsis, 327 Maple Avenue. The question of moving the train station is an old question. I don't think anybody ever thought we were going to pick the station up and move it north. What I believe, and I'm just going to comment, I think that everybody thought the platform would move north. People were against that. Now, the solution, and I think it's probably an easy solution, is to keep the platform where it is. I believe it holds up to 7 cars. I looked at the signs. It says car 7, car, they're numbered. And have the train stop in front of the train station just further south. Does anybody know how many cars on average that the train is carrying these days?
Varies.
I stopped just coming here tonight, and there were 6 cars.
Okay.
They were the double cars.
Okay.
And 2 of the cars were blocking Oradell Avenue, and this was going south towards Hoboken. Right. And the engine was to the north side of Kindercommack Road. So the engine didn't even block the road. It was to the north. And you had 2 cars blocking the road, and you had 2 cars in the prime spots by the train station, and you had 2 cars at the very end of the platform. And that's just 6 cars.
Okay.
And I thought, wow, double level cars, with congestion pricing, I guess they're getting more traffic. So I know that if they have 3 cars or 4 cars, they do manage to stop going southbound far enough, depending on the driver or the engineer, for the gates to come up. But, I haven't seen that recently, just being, firsthand experience. And I go through there 3 or 4 times a day. So
you bring up a good point with the double cars. They're just starting to come north. They've been down south for a few years now. So maybe that's the solution, having more double cars and fewer. And then still, I still believe they could make the platform a little longer. And also, we're spending all this time restoring the train station. Now we're going to make it a useless building. Right now, everybody stands in front of this train station. It's actually part of the experience. You move it up you move it north, it becomes a platform like they have in Westchester. There's no character to it. I mean, we have that. So my suggestion is look into the double cars as your idea, more double cars, and then stopping before the gate, going north. And we wouldn't have that the east-west corridor that's so important. Someone brought it up tonight, Also, the train station was moved once in the 1880s. It used to be It used to be on the north side, and then when in 1890 they built. Well, those days they moved buildings. They don't move
the
buildings
horses?
now. Just so
Oh,
you
we should have
know.
left it where it was.
Yeah. Or the hotel was in the way. You know, in those days, I'm amazed looking in the archives how many buildings were moved in this town. I think there was a common thing. They didn't knock them down, but now they don't move them. They just tear them down. So, but that's my thought. And lastly, this was a good presentation, but it was to the board. When would we have a presentation for the public? You know, the public's not going to see this unless they're watching OPTV or YouTube. You know, it was very interesting. And I think if more people were here, they might ask questions. You know, was there any plans for that?
Going to make that public?
It is public, it's on the video.
No, but not public as in
But
announced.
Is the document?
It's, obviously it's going to be on YouTube, it's on OPTV, it's on the borough website.
It is? It's
yeah.
posted now?
Oh, yeah.
So we can get it and...
It was attached to the agenda tonight,
That's what I meant.
So we could get it and pass it around?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
I solicited input from the mayor council. I gave them a copy. I solicited input from the two superintendents to both districts, OPS and Riverdale, and I gave them copies to redistribute out. So, we've given, and then I've given hard copies out to the planning board the last meeting, which obviously made around to some of the professionals. So it's out there. I don't think that, we mentioned anything on social media about the results are public, but that's something we could do.
That's what I'm requesting. I think it'd be great. You know, we did that in the last survey.
Yeah, we'll provide a link to this meeting and then provide a link to the actual PDF document. Sure, we can
Let
do that.
people know. Also, I did see the age group. There's a large population of over 65 here, and not all of them are wired, and if there was a way, I think the Christmas, the holiday party we had, you had over 100 seniors there. If we had given out the survey to them at that time, that would have been beneficial. And you never get that kind of gathering.
We did talk
What
to,
did
was
you
it
do?
Christie, is it? In the
Yeah, there were copies of the survey available for people to take home.
They didn't know it, though, Steve. I was there. Those people, 2 or 3 people may have taken a copy, but I think it would have been good to announce it. You never get that kind of gathering of seniors, maybe once a year, and they're shut-ins, a lot of them. So that would have been an opportunity. And I'm only bringing it up because I saw it, so. And I'm a senior now, too, but I'm wired. So I have no problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Patrick Duroma, Woodridge resident from Bergen County Complete Streets. I believe the mayor is the only one I recognize up here from the last time I was here. I was invited to come here by Councilman Michael Staff. He recommended stopping by tonight. I basically I think the idea was kind of just to get to know some of you guys, but I saw the survey and I couldn't help but notice some stuff about it that was really interesting that I kind of wanted to talk about, if that was okay. Specifically, I noted a couple of questions. Question 13, 14, 15, 16, and 21 and 22. So just for reminders about what those were. The idea here is that when I was at the mayor and council meeting last time, I was speaking about complete streets, and there's a lot of stuff in this survey that a lot of what was in the survey.
What is complete street?
Sorry, I'll explain. So a complete street is a street that is designed to be safe and comfortable for all road users, not just vehicles. So primarily here in New Jersey, we design roads for cars first and everybody else second. That's the predominant philosophy. It's in everything from how wide they are and how much that encourages fast vehicle speeds the idea that we make roads very wide so it's not easy for a pedestrian to cross. It's that much more distant. We make turns very wide and rounded so that cars can turn from one road onto another without having to slow down nearly as much. All of that makes pedestrian and cyclist safety much more difficult to achieve. And as a result, and it's borne out in the data, as a result, New Jersey is one of the worst states in the country for pedestrian and cyclist fatalities. So with regards to the survey, I kind of wanted to highlight some stuff because I know in general, a lot of people think about a lot of the concerns that residents have with stuff that was mentioned in the survey as being trade-offs, either or. But in a lot of cases, complete streets actually allows you to kind of get the best of both worlds without having to give up much of anything. So I just kind of wanted to highlight some of that stuff. In question 13, the concerns were raised. It was asked what are some of the top three concerns. Two of them were traffic and one of them was cost of living. For question 14, it was, if you live in Oradell, what are you most concerned about? There's increased taxes, traffic, worsened flooding, and declining number of businesses. A benefit of complete streets is, well, there are many benefits. There's obviously the safety benefits, but there's also a cost of living benefit to it. I highlighted this at the last meeting, but one of the things that is sort of hidden below the surface sometimes is that you can actually lower the benefit I brought up at the meeting last time was that if you design streets where not everybody needs to drive all the time, 2-car households might be able to go to 1, 3-car households might be able to go to 2. Dropping a car, big savings. Car costs on average about $10,000 a year. That's massive. I mean, if you were to cut property taxes by $10,000 a year, your residents would cheer you on, right? But there's also the ability to lower taxes in general, because if you have complete streets designs, a lot of that leads to, especially if you focus it around your downtown area, walkable downtown areas are gold mines for a town. That is the most valuable real estate, and the more walkable it is, the more businesses there thrive, the more, in order to achieve that walkability, you kind of by necessity have to have a mix of either more density, something that's kind of being required by the state through the affordable housing requirements, but also the lack of having to build massive parking lots, which addresses another concern that residents expressed in this survey, lack of parking. When you have more walkable places, more bikeable places, if somebody wants to walk there, they don't need a parking spot at all. If somebody wants to bike there, their parking spot takes up 1/10 of the space of a car. So all of that saves you money in terms of stuff you have to build. It also makes your land use far more efficient. And as a result, the tax revenue you get versus the amount of services you need to provide for the same area is greatly switched in favor of the town. So stuff like that is really important. And then getting to just some of those other questions briefly, the increase of facilities for adults, stuff like dining, access to parks, all that. Something I wanted to highlight too is that I'm trying to remember which one it was. Oh yes, so it was question 16 was kind of interesting. This sort of highlights something that I've found in my advocacy, is that a lot of people don't really feel like bike lanes are very valuable. A lot of residents, generally speaking, like we have a very car-centric infrastructure. We live in a very car-centric country, so a lot of people don't really think of transportation as being anything other than a car. And so bike lanes are usually kind of an afterthought. But again, this is sort of something that is highlighted in the survey where in question 16, what facilities are lacking that you would like to see more of in the future? Bicycle lanes actually rank pretty low, but a lot of the things that ranked very high are actually kind of enabled by, to be fair, walking paths was up there, but also bike paths is another thing that kind of facilitates that as well. Alternative modes of transportation that are more space efficient than cars are just a net positive across the board in terms of They make local businesses thrive. They save the town money. They allow residents to save money if they can manage to drop a car as a result. If biking around is something that appeals to them and fills a transportation need locally that they were normally having an extra car for. There's a lot of stuff like that. So I just kind of wanted to highlight some of that from the survey. I already spoke at the last meeting that advocating for Oradell to adopt a complete streets policy, which my understanding is that is something that is viewed as kind of a no-brainer by the green team here. And so I just wanted to sort of build on my comments from that meeting and explain some of those other benefits.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone, for your comments. I'll close public, and I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone. Have a good night.